Mr. Speaker, the worst failure of this Prime Minister this year is the promise to balance the budget. The promise was made, but the Parliamentary Budget Officer tabled a report which forecasts the deficit to $28 billion. Why did the Prime Minister mislead Canadians about balancing the budget? The right honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, our commitment in 2015 was to create economic growth to benefit the middle class and those working hard to join it. That's exactly what we delivered by reducing taxes for the middle class, by increasing taxes on the 1% wealthiest Canadians. We brought in the Canada Child Benefit, which helped 9 families out of 10 and which helped lift 300,000 children out of poverty. We know there's still a lot of work to be done. Infrastructure investment, the fight against poverty, investing in our seniors and youth. We will continue. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Canadians had a choice, and Canadians voted for a balanced budget. That was the promise that this Prime Minister ran on. And now we find out that his temporary and tiny deficits are now massive and permanent. They're not $10 billion, they're not $15 billion, not 20, not 25. The Parliamentary Budget Officer says they could grow to as high as $30 billion. Deficits today mean higher taxes tomorrow. Will the Prime Minister tell Canadians in what year the budget will be balanced?
Well, Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, one of the first things we discovered when we came to office in 2015 was that the Conservatives' phony balancing of the budget actually hurt Canadians. It hurt our veterans. It hurt our public service. It cut in Canadian border services and police services. They cut services that Canadians needed right across the country in order to present a phony budget balance just in time for the election. Well, we made a different choice, Mr. Speaker, to invest in Canadians. And what has that delivered? The lowest unemployment rate in 40 years and 800,000 new jobs in the past 3 years.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister needs to stop saying falsehoods about our record and start telling the truth about his record. It was the Conservative government that left a balanced budget. You know how we know it was balanced, Mr. Speaker? Because the Finance Department said it was. His own minister's department told Canadians that the budget was balanced. We did it while lowering taxes and protecting core services for Canadians. But his reckless deficits are putting social services under great pressure. In less than 5 years, more tax dollars will go to the interest on the debt than is currently being spent on health care. When will the budget be balanced?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite wants to talk about the facts. The Conservatives under Stephen Harper had the lowest growth rate in Canadian history since the depths of the Great Depression. They added $150 billion to our national debt with stubbornly low growth to show for it. We made a different choice, and Mr. Speaker, Canadians supported us in investing in communities, in investing in the middle class, instead of giving tax boutique credits to the wealthiest Canadians. We focus on growing the economy for everyone. And
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, what the Prime Minister is trying to do is distract from his terrible record by saying things that just aren't true. The Conservative government protected Canada's economy through the worst global recession since the 1920s. We did it while cutting taxes and bringing Canada back to balance. But what he has done is racked up massive amounts of new debt. He inherited a great fortune, a perfect situation for the Canadian economy, a balanced budget and a booming global economy. He has squandered that and blown through the savings. When will the budget be balanced?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this is very interesting. What we see from the Conservatives is a doubling down on Stephen Harper's economic plan, the plan that Canadians soundly rejected in 2015, giving tax breaks to the wealthiest, cutting things like veteran services, health care for refugees, eliminating the long-form census. These are the things that the Harper government did that they are once again running on, Mr. Speaker. They have no real plan for the economy. We have created 800,000 new jobs and have
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, what the Prime Minister is trying to do is double down on a failed plan of higher taxes and massive deficits, threatening Canadians as we head into difficult economic headwinds. In fact, the IMF said today that there are significant risks that he is worried Canada is not prepared for. But it's not a surprise that the Prime Minister is not worried. He's never had to worry about money. So he doesn't worry about what happens to Canadians when he blows through their savings. When will the Prime Minister understand that the federal budget is not a trust fund for his disposal?
Right, Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what the Conservatives didn't understand, and what they obviously failed to understand, is you cannot grow the Canadian economy through cuts to services, through cuts to Canadians. You need to invest in Canadians. You need to invest in the middle class and those working hard to join it. You need to invest in infrastructure in their communities. You need to invest in science and research. You need to invest in our young people. And that, Mr. Speaker, is exactly what we've done. And that is how we've created 800,000 new jobs over the past years and have the lowest unemployment in...
L'Honorable.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has often boasted about inheriting a great family fortune. He's never had to worry about the cost of living, so it's no wonder that he doesn't worry when his policies drive up the cost for Canadians. His tax on gas, on home heating and groceries will hurt seniors, suburban moms and small businesses. And worse, government documents now show that by the year 2022, the carbon tax will have to be 6 times higher than Liberals now admit, driving up gas prices another whopping 70 cents a litre and home heating by another $1,000 a year. So, what is the full and final price of the Liberal carbon tax?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we have put forward a strong and robust plan to address climate change and to support Canadians through this transition. We have a plan, and it's perfectly okay, obviously, for people to ask questions or to criticize or to suggest improvements. What is not correct, Mr. Speaker, is to not recognize that the Conservatives have no plan to fight climate change. They have no idea how to fight climate change and prepare our economy for the future, to create the jobs of the future. They don't see it to be as a priority, and Mr. Speaker, that's where they're wrong. Canadians know, from wildfires to floods to droughts right across the country, we need to act on climate change, and they are not.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, it's the Liberal government that doesn't have a plan to reduce emissions in Canada. All their plan is a tax grab. The reason why we know it won't reduce emissions is because they've given a massive exemption to the largest emitters in Canada. The full cost of the carbon tax will fall to hardworking Canadian families, commuters, soccer moms, and small businesses. And worse yet, we know now that the carbon tax will be higher in the future. So, will the Prime Minister tell us what is the full and final price for the Liberal carbon tax?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Again, Mr. Speaker, if you'll notice, you'll see that the Conservatives do not want to address the question of what their alternative is, how they are going to fight climate change. We've been very clear. We're going to put a price on pollution. We're accelerating the phase out of traditional coal power. We're making historic investments in cleaner infrastructure. We're adopting regulations to cut methane emissions. We are moving forward in a way that is going to support families and protect them for the future, where the Conservatives have no plan at all, Mr. Speaker, and that's unacceptable.
Mr. Speaker, it's the Liberal government that has put a price of 0 for the largest emitters in Canada. They have granted a huge exemption to large emitters that can afford to hire lobbyists to get a special deal. Hard-working Canadian families, commuters, have to bear the full brunt of this Liberal carbon tax. And now we find out that the carbon tax will have to be even higher in the future. So if the Prime Minister claims that he doesn't mind getting questions, will he answer the simple question, what is the full and final cost of his carbon tax?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, unlike the Conservatives, we believe that emissions need to go down and that we need to continue creating good middle-class jobs for Canadians. So what the Conservatives are saying is actually factually wrong. We have set a target for industry to reduce pollution. If they fail to meet that target, they pay the price. If they do better, for example through innovation, they are rewarded. Our plan will also give money directly to households where the federal backstop applies. The only mystery here is why the Conservatives refuse to have a plan themselves.
Order. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, they've granted a huge exemption. That is from their own documents. And when a company goes over that target, they don't pay a tax. They can purchase offsets. So they have come up with a scheme that allows the country's largest emitters to avoid paying the carbon tax. But that special deal is not available to hardworking Canadian families, commuters, suburban moms, or small and medium-sized businesses who have to pay the full brunt. We know what the costs are going to be today. What will the full and final cost be for the carbon tax in the future?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, there are two reasons why the Conservatives are so worked up about our plan. First of all, they have no plan that they can talk about. And secondly, in provinces where the federal backstop applies, Canadian households will be receiving more from the climate action incentive than the cost of pricing pollution. That means that the ones who will pay are the companies who pollute the most. Conservatives like Stephen Harper and Doug Ford and this current leader are so ideologically against any environmental protection, they want to take that money away from Canadians. While Conservatives want to make pollution free again, we're putting it...
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
It's this government's plan that makes emissions free for the largest emitters, and Conservatives are ideologically opposed to a tax that raises the cost of living for Canadians. That will be the choice in the next election, Mr. Speaker. Now, this Prime Minister has failed in so many areas, but there's one file that he is succeeding in. He went around the world and bragged about his plan to phase out Canada's energy sector. And sad to say, it's working. He's chased out new pipeline proponents. He's bringing in a bill that will ensure that no future pipeline gets built. Will the Prime Minister do the right thing and scrap Bill C-69?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, when the Conservatives talk about scrapping Bill 69, which is focused on giving tighter timelines, a single project, single evaluation, and respond to the concerns of industry, when they talk about scrapping Bill C-69, they actually mean let's go back to SIA 2012 that Harper put forward. That was an absolute failure for industry. It was a failure in getting anything built, and it would be a disaster for the oil and gas industry, like for industries right across this country. We will not do that.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, what the Prime Minister is trying to do is try to convince Canadians that his reckless actions haven't had an impact on the energy sector. But here's the reality. Under the Conservative government, 4 major pipeline projects were built by private sector dollars, increasing our capacity to ship our energy to markets by over 1 million barrels a day. There were 3 pipeline projects on the book when he took over. 2 are completely dead, and 1 is on a lifeline with no plan to move it forward. So, will the Prime Minister do the right thing and scrap his No More Pipeline bill?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we've known for a long time, listening to the energy, that their #1 priority is getting our oil resources to markets other than the United States. That has been something they have asked for a long time. Stephen Harper and his Conservatives worked very, very hard to try and get that done, and they didn't get it done for 10 years, Mr. Speaker. We are moving forward in a significant way, in the right way, understanding that working with environmental groups, respecting community interests, partnering with Indigenous peoples is the only way to get things done right.
Président, selon le directeur parlementaire du budget, l'échec du Premier ministre à la frontière coûtera plus d'1 milliard. Et les provinces touchées envoient maintenant des factures au Premier ministre. Quand le Premier ministre va-t-il comprendre que la seule façon d'arrêter de payer les factures qui dépassent le milliard de dollars, c'est enfin fermer les brèches dans l'entente sur les tiers pays sourds.
Nous travaillons avec les États-Unis, nous travaillons avec nos partenaires provinciaux pour s'assurer que notre système d'immigration continue à être ferme et fiable. Nous savons que oui, des arrivants irréguliers, des demandeurs d'asile posent un défi au système, mais en même temps, nous pouvons rassurer les Canadiens qu'en matière de sécurité, toutes les vérifications sont faites. En matière d'application de notre système d'immigration dans son intégralité, nous sommes en train de le faire. Nous comprenons que c'est une situation complexe, mais nous travaillons avec les provinces et avec nos partenaires.
Monsieur le Président, non seulement la crise créée par le Premier ministre coûtera plus d'1 milliard, mais on apprend ce matin que des compensations ont dû être offertes aux résidents près du chemin Roxham. C'est une autre étape dans cette crise qui a vu les installations de la côte devenir permanentes et les provinces se mettre à envoyer des factures. Le Premier ministre doit cesser de faire payer les autres pour ses échecs. Va-t-il enfin régler cette crise?
Nous veillons à ce que notre système d'immigration demeure juste et fasse preuve de compassion, tout en assurant l'intégrité de notre frontière et la sécurité de nos communautés. Nous investissons 173 millions de dollars pour la sécurité frontalière et pour accélérer le traitement des demandes d'asile. Les conservateurs, eux, ont réduit le budget de l'agence de 390 millions de dollars, coupé les soins de santé offerts aux réfugiés et maintenant veulent que le Canada ignore les lois internationales. Nous continuerons d'appliquer les lois canadiennes et de respecter nos obligations internationales.
Mr. Speaker, he claims that Canada's immigration system should be compassionate and fair. There's nothing fair about crossing through an illegal border crossing from a safe part of upstate New York into Canada, jumping the queue, skipping the line, and forcing others to wait longer because more and more resources have to go to those coming into Canada illegally. That is the legacy that this Prime Minister caused with his irresponsible tweet. And literally, they have done nothing to stop the problem. Instead of just adding up the costs, will they finally do something to stop the crossings themselves?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are ensuring that our immigration system remains fair and compassionate, all the while ensuring the integrity of our border and the security of our communities. We will continue to ensure that Canadian law is applied and that our international obligations are respected. I will also highlight, Mr. Speaker, in this, the last opportunity for PMQs in this House. It's a pleasure to be taking questions from everyone, not just the Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Speaker.
I have good news for the Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker. After the 2019 election, he won't have to answer questions he doesn't like in this House. Mr. Speaker, he has to answer for the fact that he has done absolutely nothing to stop the illegal border crossings into our country. Now, he can try to hide the truth and say things that aren't true. He knows it was the Conservative government that added 26% worth of Canada service agents at our borders. It's Conservatives who are proposing real solutions to solve this problem. When will he do something about it?
Yeah. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I look forward to the opportunity to present our plan to Canadians next year in the federal election and look forward to going against what seems to be the Harper Conservative platform once again. Mr. Speaker, the Harper Conservatives cut $390 million. Mr. Speaker, I suggest you give them a little indulgence. They all want an opportunity to ask questions and make comments, Mr. Speaker, on this last day of Prime Minister question period in this House of Commons. Mr. Speaker, we're going to continue to stand up for Canadians and ensure that things move forward properly. That's something we've committed to Canadians.
Monsieur le Président, le couronnement de l'année des chefs du Premier ministre doit être sans entente catastrophique sur l'ALENA. Avec sa longue liste de concessions, notamment sur le secteur automobile, les médicaments d'ordonnance et les produits laitiers. L'entente est tellement mauvaise que le principal conseiller économique de Donald Trump a dit que le Canada a donné généreusement. Pourquoi le Premier ministre n'a-t-il pas obtenu l'élimination des tarifs sur l'acier et l'aluminium pendant les négociations de l'ALENA?
Depuis le début des négociations de l'ALENA a toujours été de conclure un bon accord pour le Canada. Et c'est exactement ce que nous avons fait. Cet accord protégera les plus de 2 milliards de dollars par jour en échange à la frontière, permettra l'accès sans tarif à plus de 70% des exportations canadiennes et améliorera les opportunités pour les Canadiens. Cet accord rend les règles plus justes pour l'industrie automobile, conserve le mécanisme binational de résolution de conflits et conserve la gestion de l'offre. Alors que les conservateurs voulaient suivre les conseils de Stephen Harper et signer n'importe
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister didn't say he would go to Washington to get a good deal. He said he would go and get a better deal. But let's look at the deal he got. He uses the word capitulate. It was the Liberals who capitulated on dairy, signing away market access and preventing our farmers from exporting. It's the Liberals who agreed to a cap on auto exports. They agreed to adopt Donald Trump's pharmaceutical regime, increasing costs for Canadian patients. Now, after giving all that away to Donald Trump, did the Prime Minister get any assurances on when steel and aluminum tariffs would finally be lifted?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to take a moment once again to thank all the Canadians from across the country, including of different ideologies, including some Conservatives, who worked hard to negotiate the right deal for Canada. We can be assured that this was a deal that continues to secure our access to our most important trading partner at a time of uncertainty and unpredictability from that trading partner. We got rid of the ratchet clause, which infringed upon our sovereignty by preventing our government from controlling access to our energy resources. We kept Chapter 19. The cultural exemption will apply to digital programs.
The member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman, I think would do well to restrain himself a bit. Order. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I am convinced the Prime Minister had to Google what the ratchet clause was before he could even list that. This Prime Minister points to as a victory was something that a previous Conservative government already got for Canadians. But he had one bargaining chip left, Mr. Speaker. He told Donald Trump that if he didn't get rid of tariffs, there would be no photo op. Well, the Donald called his bluff. And he knew that the Prime Minister couldn't resist another photo being taken. And there he was, signing along with the rest of the leaders. Now, in exchange for taking his picture with Donald Trump, did he get an end to the steel and aluminum tariffs?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it's wonderful to be able to look into this space and see every seat filled. And I know there may be a few people here who are here for the first time. But let me tell you, the Conservative benches, Mr. Speaker, allow me to express that the Conservative Party is usually a lot more quiet than this. They're usually a lot more respectful. But on this, the very last day of a Wednesday question period in the House, I think they all want to be heard. That is the problem. Mr. Speaker, will the Leader of the Opposition allow some of his fellow members to ask questions of the Prime Minister? Apparently not.
The Honourable Order. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker and ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens when a Prime Minister doesn't like the questions, when he has to answer for his failed record on carbon taxes, on deficits, on signing away concession after concession to Donald Trump without anything in return. He starts to ask for someone else to ask him a question. Well, don't worry. worry, Mr. Speaker, through you, the Prime Minister needn't worry for too long, because come 2019, Mr. Speaker, Canadians will send someone into that chair who isn't afraid of the tough questions and actually puts
Maybe we'll all start caroling next, right? The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, after 10 years of Stephen Harper's governance, we step forward with a fresh plan to invest in Canadians, to invest in communities. And that plan, Mr. Speaker, is working. Over 800,000 new jobs over the past 3 years, the lowest unemployment rate in over 40 years. Canadians are more confident about the future, looking to their kids' future with optimism. We have a plan on climate change. We are taking action on building a stronger future. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives have only a failed plan to fall back on because they are presenting no new ideas of their own, Mr. Speaker.
Monsieur le Président, le nouveau gouvernement du Québec a pris une série de décisions suite à son élection dans différents secteurs. Des décisions pour lesquelles elle a reçu un mandat clair de la population. Et quelle est la réaction habituelle du Premier ministre pour chaque enjeu? Il critique les décisions provinciales et tente de donner des leçons à Québec. Quand le Premier ministre va-t-il comprendre qu'il y a des champs de compétences au Canada et que Québec est tout à fait libre d'occuper les siens sans se faire constamment critiquer par ce Premier ministre
criticized by this centralizing Prime Minister.
J'étais très content de m'asseoir pour la 5e fois avec les premiers ministres des provinces et des territoires la semaine passée pour avoir des conversations franches sur comment on va continuer à travailler ensemble. C'est quelque chose que Stephen Harper refusait de faire pendant les dernières années de ses mandats parce qu'il ne voulait pas parler aux provinces. Moi, je crois dans la collaboration, dans la coopération et je peux souligner que le travail que nous faisons avec la province du Québec va très bien. Nous respectons énormément leurs perspectives et nous allons travailler avec eux pour améliorer le sort des Québécois et de tous les Canadiens.
Monsieur le Président, ce n'est pas une question d'avoir des réunions avec des provinces, c'est une question de respecter les provinces. De Fleuve à Lévis, les travailleurs de chantier Davy ont livré dans les coûts et selon les chantiers la ravitailleur Astérix. Nos brèves hommes et femmes en uniforme ont besoin de notre ravitailleur, l'Obélix, que le chantier Davy est prêt à construire demain matin. Le Premier ministre doit arrêter de jouer à des jeux politiques et octroyer avant Noël ce contrat au chantier Davy. Qu'attend-il pour le faire?
Croire que le député en face vient de me demander d'arrêter de jouer à la politique dans cette question-là, parce que c'est lui qui joue à la petite politique. Les forces armées ont fait une analyse. Ils n'ont pas besoin de l'Obélix. Et que lui suggère qu'on devrait quand même l'acheter, ce n'est que de la politique de base de la pire façon. Nous prenons nos décisions basées sur les faits. Nous reconnaissons la qualité du travail fait par Davy. Nous travaillons avec eux pour leur donner plus d'emplois. Mais nous n'allons pas inventer des contrats pour des raisons politiques, Monsieur le Président.
Je dis ça à nos hommes et femmes dans la force armée et à les travailleurs de Davy, Monsieur le Président. Mais quand on regarde l'entendu des échecs du Premier ministre, on constate qu'il échoue à traiter les provinces comme des partenaires. Il agit plutôt comme tout bon libéral de façon paternaliste et centralisatrice. Le nouveau gouvernement du Québec a identifié le troisième lien à l'axe comme une priorité pour répondre aux problèmes de mobilité dans la vieille capitale. Le Premier ministre peut-il enfin s'engager à être un partenaire fiable dans ce projet?
Record en infrastructure au cours des 3 dernières années. On a démontré qu'on est là pour être des partenaires. Mais je peux vous dire, Monsieur le Président, le projet dont parle le député en face n'existe pas encore. C'est une idée qu'ils soumettent une proposition, un plan, et on va tout à fait le regarder, Monsieur le Président. Président. Nous sommes là pour ça. Mais il ne faut pas, encore une fois, inventer des projets pour des causes politiques. Nous, on va faire les choix basés sur des faits, sur des vrais projets qui sont présentés. Et le troisième lien n'est pas à ce niveau-là encore. Quand il le sera, on travaillera avec eux.
Mr. Speaker, another massive failure for this Liberal government under this Prime Minister has been the ethics file. This is the only Prime Minister in Canadian history to have been found guilty of breaking ethics laws, and several other members of his team followed suit. The finance minister conveniently forgot about a villa in France, and other ministers have been found guilty of breaking rules. Now there's a massive investigation with a big cloud of suspicion around a former Liberal MP and a Liberal cabinet minister. So can the Prime Minister tell us exactly how many more Liberals are currently being investigated by the RCMP or other police?
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite just got censured by the ethics commissioner for having told one of his members to break the ethics rules. Mr. Speaker, we will take no lessons on ethics from them or from the legacy of 10 years of how shall I say it, the kinds of practices that were all too common under the Harper Conservatives, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And before I ask my question, I just want to take this opportunity as the last question period on a Wednesday of Prime Minister's questions to wish the Prime Minister the very best on a personal basis for him and his family. I hope all parliamentarians and all party members enjoy some time with their friends and family and connect with their constituents. And in the spirit of giving, Mr. Speaker, I have given the Prime Minister 23 opportunities to answer simple and straightforward questions. I have one more gift for the Prime Minister. I'm going to give him one final chance to tell Canadians in what year the budget will be balanced.
Unwrap that, right? The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the member opposite's kind words. I wish him and his family, indeed all members in this House, a happy and safe and Merry Christmas and happy holidays. We know that this is a time of the year when we are a long way from our families. We still have a couple more days at least of work to do in this House. So we know that the days grow longer, the days grow shorter, but the time seems to grow longer. Mr. Speaker, we put forward a fiscally responsible plan that is growing the economy the way Canadians expect us to. We will keep working on creating jobs and growing the economy for all Canadians.